few weeks ago was the 6th anniversary of Star Wars Battlefront 2 and the 8th anniversary of Star Wars Battlefront 1 by DICE, and over the last few months I've genuinely seen so much talk about the Star Wars Battlefront franchise from fellow creators or just members of the community, and Battlefront is a franchise that I am incredibly passionate about. It's something I grew up with when I was a kid, and obviously I made content on it for a few years during Battlefront 2. So in today's video I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the future of Battlefront and the direction I'd like to see it go if it was to continue. Before I do go into that though, make sure you are subscribed to the channel to stay fully up to date with all things Star Wars gaming. With Star Wars Outlaws and Hunters looking to release in 2024, it's going to be a huge year for Star Wars games, so make sure you are subscribed to not miss out on any of that. So like I said, Battlefront has had a lot of discussion from various people over the last few months, and a common theme that I keep seeing, and to be fair I've been seeing it over the last few years, is people just really wanting a Battlefront 3, and I myself am very much included in that. I'm honestly still very upset at the fact that Star Wars Battlefront 2 was ended so suddenly, because it genuinely still had so much to give with content that was already out. For example, The Mandalorian Season 1 was out at that point, and there was still basically no content from Star Wars Rebels. There was loads left they could have done from Star Wars The Clone Wars, and even the 9 episodic films of the Star Wars franchise, along with Rogue One and Solo, there was still more from all of them that they could have made content on, and of course you can't forget Star Wars Resistance. So across the board from Star Wars there was loads of content they could have added, but in just the few years that we've now had without Battlefront 2, there's been 2 seasons of The Bad Batch with Season 3 coming next year. We've had Andor, Ahsoka, more episodes of The Mandalorian, Kenobi, and just so much more. And every single time one of these shows release, it always makes me think about what could have been with Star Wars Battlefront 2. With the way things were going with this game, we could have had pretty major content updates every 2 to 3 months, with smaller content updates in between them, where for a few months they focus on the likes of Andor, for example, and then after that they could have done a few months of content focused on The Bad Batch Season 2, and then after that could have been Mando Season 3, and so on. And from all of them, there's plenty of maps, skins, heroes, weapons, and everything that could have been added to the game, and it just would have been absolutely insane, and no doubt DICE would have made tons and tons of money on that. Every time there's a new Star Wars show coming out as well, Battlefront spikes in popularity, and even to this day on the PlayStation it's so easy to find games, so it clearly is still a very popular game. And literally within the last week or two I've had conversations with a few friends and family that I didn't even initiate, and they said that Battlefront 2 was amazing, and they're not necessarily even huge Star Wars fans either, so it clearly appealed to non-Star Wars fans as well. Star Wars is one of those franchises that's so big that, you know, it really baffles me that we don't have anything current with the multiplayer space that just incorporates everything. Like Battlefront 2 was genuinely just such a perfect game for that kind of stuff, and it really baffles me that we just genuinely don't have anything like that anymore, because for game developers it would genuinely be such a money making machine. I know Lucasfilm obviously take that 20% licensing fee, but with the amount of money they'd be making anyway, that's honestly should not be a concern, and if it is then I just honestly think that's a little bit silly, especially for a company making billions upon billions of dollars every single year like EA. So what could the future of the Battlefront franchise actually look like? Well, there are a few ways that you can ultimately look at this. Firstly, there's who would actually develop this game, and honestly, as much as I've just complained about EA with the whole licensing fee stuff, I honestly would love to see DICE make this game again, because they've already had years of experience on the Battlefront franchise, and Battlefront 2 honestly turned out being so much fun and just an incredible experience. So I absolutely would love to see them continue it. So that's the developer chosen that I'd like to see, but then at that point there are actually 2 avenues you could go down. Firstly, of course, you could just make Star Wars Battlefront 3, which is an entirely new game that has new planets, new maps, and just new everything essentially. But then of course you can't leave out people like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, Anakin, and all that stuff, so naturally you'd have to incorporate all of that. But I feel like if you did that, as cool as it would be to get new maps in same old planets that we've been playing for the last 20 years, with the same heroes we've been playing for that long as well, I feel like that would honestly start to get a little bit tedious. So honestly, something like Battlefront 3, I'd probably want to see something be completely new when it comes to the likes of who you can play as a hero and whatnot, but at the same time that just honestly wouldn't be right. So as cool as a Battlefront 3 would be, I honestly don't think that should happen, because my ideal scenario with all of this is honestly just to get DICE to essentially re-release Star Wars Battlefront 2, and I suppose remaster it for current generation consoles, because Battlefront 2 at the moment for PlayStation, for example, is a PS4 build. So what they should do is remaster it for PlayStation 5 and then the Xbox Series S and X, and then obviously put out a fresh update for PC, where if you already own the games, you can get a cheap upgrade, and then if you don't own the game, then obviously you can pay full price for it or whatever. But then within that remaster, I'd then want to see some new content as well, so add people like Din Djarin and Moff Gideon as heroes or something, just along with new maps, skins and weapons. So they don't have to add a crazy amount, but even if it was just an additional map and then a couple new heroes, like the Mustafar, Ahsoka and Asajj Ventress that they were going to be working on after the Scarif update for Battlefront 2, honestly I'd actually be fine with just those 3 things, and then maybe some new skins and weapons would be cool as well. So you essentially remaster and basically re-release Battlefront 2 with some additional content, but then from that point onwards you would then just keep continuing to build content for it in a live service model like they were doing before, where every month we essentially get a new content update, but then the major ones are pretty much every 2 to 3 months, because I wouldn't honestly expect something crazy big every single month, as that would be hugely unrealistic. But I honestly think that would be such a good way to do it, because as future shows come out, they can make content on that, but then during times where there aren't any shows like we have been now in the last sort of couple of months since Ahsoka finished, they could be releasing content on things that have already come out, like Andor for example, or even just The Mandalorian Season 1 and 2, and then maybe release Andor stuff before Andor Season 2 comes out, so that when Andor Season 2 comes out you can release content based on that as well. I honestly think that is such a good way for DICE to be able to do something like this, but I just know for a fact EA just won't do it, because they're really just trying to focus on the Battlefield franchise right now, which I totally understand them wanting to do, and I wish them all the best with this next Battlefield title after 2042. Obviously that is no doubt going to be a few years away, and I am a fan of the Battlefield franchise, so I do want to see that game do well, but it would essentially mean that if they were to do a Battlefront 2 remastered, or even just call it Battlefront 3 or whatever, then that is still probably a good 6 years away minimum, so it just isn't realistic whatsoever. Alternatively, EA could obviously just open a new studio, and then a bunch of the ex-Battlefront developers go over there and work on the game that way, because at that point you could just build a new team outside of DICE and whatnot, but obviously that would have implications for Battlefield as well, but that would mean that DICE can be a Battlefield-centric developer, and then you just have another developer that focuses on Battlefront. That might of course be a little bit unreasonable, but still I think honestly this would be such a good way for them to re-release Battlefront 2 and honestly just make so much money on this game, because as you will all know by now, the potential for it is just absolutely massive, and it is just genuinely baffling that we just don't have that right now. So my fingers are very much crossed that we do get something at some point, but I do fear that we are a very long time away from that. But yeah, honestly I could go over this for hours upon hours and talk about all of the content for weeks, so I am going to wrap it up there. Make sure you let me know what your thoughts are on this in the comments below. Do you think we should get another Battlefront game, or do you think we should just let Battlefront die off at this point? If you made it this far, you very much know my opinion on this, so I'm really curious to see what you guys think. That is going to be it from me today though. Thank you all very much for watching, and may the force be with you always.